topic in total, just to repeat for people, is, are you feeling alone sometimes or often when you're working remotely? And what we're going to look at is that in essence, loneliness, and the top things that we can do to combat, to be proactive in dealing with loneliness. And you can see that we've got various different people joining us. We're going to go through and introduce the panel members in a minute. But I'm the moderator. I'm Rowena Hennigan. I'm a founder based in Zaragoza in Spain, originally from Ireland. I founded Row Remote almost 5 years ago now, and I am delighted to deal and discuss with this topic today on behalf of SafetyWing and the expert panel, because it is a real problem for remote workers, a real challenge, maybe for all workers as well, because loneliness is an emotion that we can all encounter at some points of our lives. So a little bit about SafetyWing, who've brought us together here today. SafetyWing provide global benefits for the remote workforce. There was a QR code at the start there where you can find out more. They provide insurance for remote teams, and SafetyWing are providing and building a massive global social safety net. And here's their product roadmap. So it's wonderful to see their plans. You can see they've got nomad insurance, remote health, and other things coming along the line in the next few years. So thanks to SafetyWing for being the host for today. Let's look at the agenda. We're going to run a quick poll just to get people, give people a chance to get here and to understand a little bit about the live audience joining today. So to repeat, and in preparation for the Q&A, if you've got any Q&A, pop them into the Q&A tab and we will handle them as we either go along or at the end of the session. Also, we want to run a poll in a minute. So we're going to ask you to answer a question about your remote operations. I know we have a lot of HR people that normally join, people leaders, so I'd love to get your input on that. And we'll move into the panel discussion in a couple of minutes. So let's launch the poll and get a feel for the audience out there. And is your organization borderless? Okay, so you should have the prompt there in the session, in the webinar software tool, to answer this question. And we've got the poll in progress happening. So maybe you could tick one of the boxes there. Again, feel free to share and chat if you want to comment on this. So let us know, select one of the following. What category do you sit in? How many countries do you operate in? Or are you just in the planning to look at becoming borderless in the future? So we'll give that a few seconds, give people a chance, invite them to answer. Fantastic. So let's have a look at the responses. We've got 23% that are saying, no, we do not have plans to become borderless. And 5% that don't want to. That's fair enough. Maybe you've got some remote or hybrid working within your own geography. We've also got a small amount, or an amount in 2 countries, 3 to 5, and 6 or more countries. That's interesting. It's right across the extremes of the scale. So that's interesting for these webinars to see that. So thank you for sharing that. Now, let's move on and meet today's panelists. So I am really delighted, from all the way over to Singapore, I think over to Atlanta, right across the globe, and a few of us even based here in Europe, to welcome the different panelists today. So it really is an international gathering. And we've got Melissa NG, founder from Bravely, based out of Singapore, waving, saying hello to everyone. We've got Demonte from Mindledic as well. She's joining us from France today. Thank you for that, Demonte. Wonderful to have you here. Colleen Clarkson, fantastic that he could make it as well. I'm really delighted that he could join. And Vera as well from Unlock. And Kaleem is from Blend Me Inc. over, I believe you're in Atlanta, Kaleem. Check. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Sometimes these remote workers can be in different places. And we've got Vera Lackmeyer from Unlock in Belgium today. So welcome, welcome panelists. Wonderful to have you here today with us. Delighted that we could gather you all together on this really important topic. So let's move along and start to get into the the panel discussion. And I wanted to take the time to make sure, and as we go into the first questions, if you want to do a little bit of an introduction, but people have the webinar details. I wanted to get into the nitty and gritty today because it's such an important topic and a challenge definitely when it comes to remote working. So I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to cover off any questions, and I'm keeping an eye on any of those coming in as well. And what I want to start off with, just so that we set a nice context, is that we want to just look, straight away at why loneliness can be an issue for remote workers and why it's a known issue for remote workers. In particular, and I'm sure we'd all acknowledge that we can all a very regular, general, natural emotion to feel lonely. So perhaps if I start with you, Colleen, let's zone in on this. Why do you think in the organizational design, the approach of a remote working, why do you think loneliness is an issue? And then I'll go around the panel.
Yeah, I think, loneliness is an issue outside of remote work. Let's just start there. I think all the research has pointed to we've grown towards a more lonely society. I think digital devices and the way we live now, we're not in villages and we're moving and we're changing jobs as frequently. Very difficult to create that community set of people. So let's just start with that. But as far as the failed design, I'm sure everyone's going to have some things to say about this. But, I feel like the biggest challenge is that people rely too much on the water cooler, impromptu, hi, how you doing? I just feel like those interactions are just blown significantly out of proportion. I don't believe those are great connection opportunities. So I think the design that we're seeing that's wrong is that organizations are not being intentional about scheduling those opportunities and providing different modalities as well. Some people like in person, some people prefer virtual. So I just think that the design right now is some organizations are kind of used to, oh, well, I saw Jim yesterday. I saw Mel yesterday. I saw Vera yesterday. Well, did we even talk? Did we have a real meaningful conversation? So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. And one last thing I'll say is I honestly feel like, and we're probably jaded a little bit here as a panel, but I firmly believe in the saying of absence makes the heart grow fonder. So when you do get together, because we are going to meet all of us, I'm going to ask you first if you're accepting hugs, but then I'm going to come in for one. And yeah, that's what I think is the biggest challenge.
Beautiful way to kick it off. Lots to digest there, Kaleem, lots to digest. And I'm particularly going to grab onto a highlight for me is that it's a problem outside of work. It's a problem that any of us who read any media will know that it's loneliness is existing in all our words. I'm going to go on to you, Diamante, to see in terms of, in the context of remote work specifically, what your thoughts are on loneliness.
Yeah, so when we talk about remote work, I believe that those digital tools that that enable us to work remotely are in a way a double-edged sword. So on one hand, we have this flexibility, and more freedom, and on the other hand, it's harder to have high-quality interactions digitally with each other. So I think there are a couple of components here. So probably the first thing I would mention is we lose that chance encounters. So we lose this opportunity to meet someone spontaneously, to have a quick chat, for example, maybe grab a coffee together, catch up on things that are not work related. And I think it's super, super important to have those chats that are not work related. That's how you build connection. To talk about your cat or your family, that sort of thing. And another thing is I think is super important that we sometimes lack is a sort of physiological component. So we are not able to have this physical proximity, as Kalim said, to have a hug, to shake hands, to be in the same space together, which of course definitely lets us express ourselves, I think, better. And I think a really, really good example of that was when we were wearing face masks all the time, and we were unable to sort of really connect to people because we didn't really understand how the other person feels. So is he smiling? Is he like, what's happening? So how is he reacting to what I'm saying? So I think we sometimes lose a little bit of that as well when we work remotely. And probably the last thing I'll mention here is that in virtual meetings, people tend to sort of multitask a lot as well. So when they're not really present, when they're not really actively listening and sort of checking their emails, that sort of thing, I think it's harder to create that that high quality connection going on. So yeah.
Fantastic, and some beautiful, that's some really interesting observations there, Demonte, and you might be able to tell that Demonte is an organizational psychologist, because she certainly tapped on some things there that that I can really resonate with my psychology hat on. So some beautiful sharing there and lots to take away. Mel, I'll go to you next and then over to Vera. Anything different to add? Any observations?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is, when we think about communication, we think a lot about words and talking and messages, but there's actually a lot of nonverbal communication that goes on all the time. And very often you kind of orient yourself around how other people are behaving or how they might be responding to you in a way that's not spoken with words. So you can walk into a room and you can feel the vibe of that room without anyone saying anything to you. And you just don't have that in a remote space, in order to be able to get sort of a status check. You send a ping out, you get a ping back, and you kind of know how things are, how you should be. You have so much friction when it comes to a remote working world, because in order for you to even think about getting that sort of status update, you first have to realize it, and then you have to follow through on that, then you have to ask someone, then you have to have them say yes, then they have to show up, then you can have the conversation. And when you have so much friction, it's just really difficult, I think, to feel connected as often with as little work as you're used to in real life.
Yeah, I love it. And I also really identify with the meta communication. We're using these different hand signals. We all waved. Obviously, we're used to being on video, but we can get some of that meta communication through video. But it really resonates then that sometimes working in the remote space, it's a longer process for that connection and communication. Really valid points. Vera, anything else?
Well, I think mainly everything has been said already. Oh, okay. Lots of great things have been already said. I also think, just to add to Kalim, I also think it's the remote work and loneliness is very much in the way that we think about work, as in, every meeting we have is always a meeting, instead of having the banter before, not taking the time to actually send a message or send say hello in a meeting. But we are so focused on those meetings that we actually forget that we can do lots of things outside of the meetings. I mean, I like to sometimes send flowers to my coworkers just because I know that they had a bad day, or especially during Christmas times, I always spend lots and lots of time on writing poems to make them feel welcome and feel happy. So we are so focused on just productivity and output, and I think that we should be intentional. Just what Kalim said, we need to be intentional of what we're doing and just actually create that space within our workday and within ourselves, also with our family and friends. I mean, during COVID, we all know it. We couldn't even see our family. I mean, I couldn't see my mom for like almost a year. So you need to be intentional about it, and it all comes for me to rethink about how we want to what's the word? Not non-native here. Great. How to take
Say it in
care
your
of.
language. Say it in your language. I want to hear it in your native language, because I want to hear it. Hear it in your native language. Just try it.
Oh well, it's basically how we want to take care of it. How to fill in our lives. Yeah, that's the word, filling it in.
Yeah, how'd you fill it in?
Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful. It's so true. And like maybe it would be a good idea for people listening as well, just to take a moment and to ask, what does loneliness mean to them? Because we've touched on lots of different solutions. But also, there's been a lot of debate, okay, and this is not a theoretical panel discussion on what exactly is loneliness and what is the difference between loneliness and isolation, etc., because we're all such different individuals. So what I'd like to invite people to do is even, think, what is loneliness? What might it feel like for a minute or two, for a few seconds? And also, just some of what the panel's sharing, could that be something? There's lots of different ideas that could combat or meet the needs for social connection or community, as Colleen said, that could counteract that. Because that's where we can join maybe the dots with what's been spoken about. So some fantastic sharing there as well. And loneliness can be quite a private individual thing depending on how you understand it. And we're all very, very individual. So I'd like to move on, and I'd like to move it on from that wonderful context setting question to ask the panel, and I'll go to Mel first and then on to Demonte on this one, and then we'll see if anyone has anything else to add. What do you think are the signs maybe of that loneliness, maybe we want to use the word disconnection, lack of connection, if we agree it's a type of connection within our co-workers, our remote working colleagues. So Mel, any signs you've noticed or things that you would share in your experience?
Yeah, that's a great question, just because it is so difficult to observe in a remote setting. I think any sort of change in behavior is typically a good sign. If somebody usually participates and usually quite chatty and they speak up and suddenly they stop doing that, it's a sign that, hey, something's different. Sometimes it's the other way around as well. Somebody who used to be really quiet suddenly are participating a lot more, and it might seem like, oh, well, this is a really good thing, they're coming out of their shell, but it could be in response to feeling so lonely that this is sort of the main interaction that they're getting. And so anytime, I think you can never be too careful. Anytime you see anything that's sort of different, there's no harm checking in. And even if there's nothing wrong, like, hey, you've just started a conversation with someone.
Wonderful. I love that. And again, the way you ask that can be, especially if you've got that trust, which we know probably exists, hopefully, in the majority of remote teams. But again, depending on how you approach that, you can approach that carefully and you can check in a nice way. I will add in here that the way leaders do one-to-ones are really important, and maybe how the scripts and how the interactions might look on that, just as a little potential learning point for people. But Demonte, anything to add in terms of signs?
Yeah, so I totally agree with what Mel said. And I think it's really important to understand that for different people, loneliness might manifest in different ways as well. But there are a couple of things maybe to look for. So, for example, I would say that sort of disconnecting from work, decreasing work quality, sort of irresponsibility, or going to sort of another direction and working a lot and excessive working, overworking, that sort of thing. Also, I would say that sort of zero optimism about the future as well. So if a person doesn't want to participate in trainings, for example, and interested in career progression, that sort of thing, that might be a sign. Also, if people are sort of stop offering sort of suggestions during the meetings, not speaking during the meetings, if sort of avoids planning, that sort of thing, I would say that could be one of the signs. Also, there's a paradox here that sometimes lonely people start to avoid people as well, which is sounds crazy, but that's what it happens sometimes. So, if people are sort of, they don't join any sort of gatherings or informal meetings, if they turn their cameras off, that would be something that I would look for. And maybe, be sort of, as Mel said, maybe check in and ask what's going on. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I love the way you've presented all the different things we might see in different personalities, or how it might manifest. So there's lots of little good prompts there for people listening who might be keeping an eye on colleagues or even on themselves. Maybe people listening are noticing that in themselves with a bit of self-reflection. Vera or Kaleem, anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I did want to just kind of comment on something Vera said earlier about not being able to connect with family. And for any person that's watching, if remote work during the pandemic has been your only experience, you're gonna hear, you've probably heard Rowena say this, you've heard me say this, probably Mel as well, all of us probably. But pandemic remote work is not normal remote work. We couldn't go see our families. I mean, like, what do you mean? Of course we're freaking lonely. I mean, like, what are you talking about? We couldn't go to conferences. So don't be so hard on yourself for what you were feeling the past 2 years. So I just want to throw that out there. The other thing I wanted to comment is shout out to Mel's sign. You know what I'm saying? Like, look at Mel's sign glowing up in the background. I want to connect with Mel in person there because she's glowing up when she has a party. So that's all shout out to, is it Bravely? Shout out Bravely. That's a dope glow up sign. Yeah.
Oh.
I had nothing to add. I just need to get that out.
No,
It was gonna bother me.
That's perfect. And you said it rather than me being the broken record, Kaleem, because honestly, I think my husband would, if he hears me saying pandemic home working only is not true remote working. Another time, if he had a piggy bank, we'd be like putting in a
Hey, we're
euro.
not experts if we don't say expert opinions. I mean, that's I think that's actually, in my opinion, I actually think that's a factual statement. You know, so like we have to lead with that. Sorry.
Exactly. And in the green room, I was sharing about my nice co-working here and the space that I'm in, and I've got my colleagues, and so remote working doesn't always have to look like working from home. You can try out different spaces, and if that getting outside in the light and meeting people and doing a commute, not all commutes are bad, down the road to a co-working space helps you feel social connection, then maybe we're onto something there, right? Maybe we're onto something there. So some really good sharing there, and bringing it back to sort of real reality. So in terms of that kind of looking at counteracting, if we all more or less agree, no matter how we define those feelings of either loneliness, disconnection, and slight isolation, that we need to try and look at our schedules, our routines in a more proactive manner to counteract that. I'd like to start with Vera. Vera, can you share a little bit about what you do on a personal level? And Vera's head of remote at Unlock, and you can tell with some of her sharing that she's obviously very caring for her team, considerate, wonderful leader. But what do you do for yourself in terms of meeting those needs for connection, Vera?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm always experimenting, as in sometimes I find a routine that works for me for a little while and then it doesn't work. So it's always changing. But the things that I really take care is I try to check in with myself multiple times in the day. It's like I start in the mornings, like how is my energy? During lunch, I ask myself, how do I feel? And during the evening, I also check in how I feel. And what really is maybe only to me is that I am an extra introvert, as in, I really like having people around me, but only when it's comfortable for me. I mean, yesterday I posted about the fact that I have social anxiety to going to a co-working space. But the reason why I did was because I noticed that even though I'm in meetings with my colleagues and I have great contact with them, I sometimes just, because I like to be alone at my home with my cats and my favorite chair, feel comfy. I sometimes just feel that something is missing, as in, I miss some people around me, and sometimes it's great to have my boyfriend in the same room, but okay, then you need to do something with that. So I go to a co-working space. I had times that I started early in the morning, even though I'm not a morning person, actually make sure that I had a workout routine. Then sometimes I'm a little bit more active in online communities, a Discord community that I'm carrying over for a game that I play. So it really depends on what I'm doing. But I first ask myself always, how do I feel and what are my needs for this moment? And based on that, you make adjustments, and that literally changes every 2 weeks. If that works for me, I can't really stick that much to one routine.
Ooh,
Taking
nice.
breaks, going outside.
I really like that.
I really like that too. I really like that too, because the thing about habits and routines is we think that they're forever, and then life happens, doesn't it? you know, something happens with a schedule or something. So that experimentation, that checking in, really like that sharing. Mel, would you add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, first, I think Vera, you and I really need to be friends. I mean, you've ticked all the boxes, introvert, cats, like late night person. I'm like, sign me up. Yeah, I mean,
Glow up.
it's that's so, I mean, everything that Vera you said, I found to be really true for me. And one of the big things that I had to learn was that just because you're communicating doesn't mean you're connecting. So you can be talking to people all day or meeting people all day, but you can just wrap up your day and just feel more alone than ever. So I think it's difficult not to conflate the two together. And it's really, at the end of the day, you know, when you don't feel lonely, it's really about the connection, not the social connection. I hate that in this day and age, when you say connect with somebody, it means something completely different than it used to 10 years ago, 15 years ago. But really is about like walking away from a conversation that you've had, feeling just more grounded in who you are, feeling more excited about life, more accepting of who you are. And you can have lots of talks and discussions and just be giving the whole day in those hours of chat, and then just leave feeling like, oh, I did not enjoy that. I don't want to talk to people anymore. And it can be this sort of, it snowballs into self-fulfilling prophecy. So I think it's really about finding the right people. At least that's what works for me.
What some beautiful, beautiful sharing there, and really, really useful, because I think we spoke about it a couple of times already, but I wonder if the audience wanted to even take away that difference between, you know, quality connection and just connection. As you say, Mel, there's a real gem there, I think, in my experience as well, and what that means to you if you're tuning in today, because understanding that combined with Vera's piece on experimentation, you're not going to get it perfect. You might need to check in again and change it. I think there's some real interesting knowledge there. I also, to maybe extend out the discussion, I'll ask Diamante or Colleen to chip in a second, but I just also wonder if you can zone out and look at your role in your job. So I did refer to Vera there, saying, you know, Vera's there for everyone else, so how can she be there for herself in the nature of a role? Some of us that are leaders, it will be the same thing. So isn't it interesting, Mel, as well, that what you said there about, if you're there for everyone else all day long, if you're that connection point and what people lean on, where's that quality connection for you? So I'm very conscious we have a lot of HR people that join this, and they are wonderful, heart-filled, often heart-centered leaders. And therefore, I think that's an interesting one for the audience as well. How are you meeting that quality connection need for yourself in terms of being a leader, especially if your role during the day in our virtual world involves a lot of coaching and supporting other people? So, Demonte, Kalim, anything to add? How do you check in with yourselves?
Kalim, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So I guess for me, sometimes thinking about like how I define loneliness is important. So from a professional standpoint, it's feeling like you're seen, right? Like feeling like you're being seen, feeling like you're heard, and also like connecting again, not on a business level all the time, but more on a personal level. And a lot of times with organizations, for myself, if the organization is predominantly white and I'm just not really feeling connected, like there's different types of connections, right? So for me, you know, I grew up in a predominantly white area, so I'm used to that. But like sometimes, you know, conversations, and it can even be political as well. Just you may just not feel like you're connecting with people on some level. So when I feel that, when I start noticing that, I go find my tribe. Like you have to go find your community. I rely heavily on the Drupal web development community. That's something that I enjoy. You know, former front-end engineer, and I'll be presenting soon, soon with the Providence Drupal community. So I think what Vera was saying, checking in with yourself, I need to do more of that. Like I talk to everybody else. I talk all day. We're all speakers. We're on the speaking circuit all the time. But I never really like look at myself in the mirror and say, "Hey, Kalima, how you doing, bro? How you feeling?" And maybe I should. I'll ask other people that. How you doing? Is there anything I could do to help? You know, but to ask myself that. So yeah, I think that's really important. I think it's important. At Blend, we talk about social connections. And I know Mel's like, oh, not social connections, not all the time, but like to us, we talk about social connections and we split them up into 3 different categories. Professional connections, so like your mentors, colleagues, cohorts, lifestyle connections, so you know, mountain biking, web development, your friends, just normal, you know, just friends, and then intimate. We actually intimate connections are important, and that is, it could be with a significant other, a partner, religion, spiritual, all of these different types of connections. Organizations should be aware of them, you know, and foster opportunities. A lot of people like intimate, stay out of my relationships. Like, I don't want my job with my relationships in my sheets. Stay out my sheets, job. Well, if you ask a lot of people, I would love to know in the chat how many people met their significant other at work. The amount of people that you meet, the amount of relationships that you make at work is significant. So I don't know. That's what I would suggest. You know, find your tribe. Make sure you're looking at all your types of connections. And Vera, I think Vera's advice to me is probably the best for me. Like asking yourself and then noticing, because if you feel some kind of way, you have to pay attention to how that feeling is. You can't just ignore it. So I don't know. Rant over.
No, that was wonderful. That was wonderful. Because it shows that we're all human. None of us have this figured out. None of us have this figured out. It's all a work in progress. So I really appreciate that, Kaleem, because we can all learn from it. Such honest, authentic sharing really resonated. Demonte, anything to add from you?
Yeah, so I totally agree with you, and I totally agree that self-awareness is like the most important skill that you could have. And actually, what I personally do is I try to use Mindletic. So Mindletic is the company I'm working in, and we have this great mental gym. And one of the features that we have is this sort of emotion journaling. So you have a grid of emotions, and you can choose the emotion, and there's a description of each emotion. So every time you open the app, you can check, you know, if you feel this or that. And it really, really helps me, even though I have a psychological background myself. Still, it's really, really helpful. So yeah, self-awareness is a skill number 1. Couple of things that help me as well in terms, because I'm also working remotely, is I think I try to work at least a few times per month outside of my home. So actually, there's even a study that found that remote work can be less lonely than office-based work if you work in co-working spaces. Because you know, they seem to be even sort of more socially fulfilling than offices for some workers. So that's really interesting. And I try to, you know, go somewhere in a cafe or somewhere else in a co-working space. Another thing that really, really helps me is to make plans. I couldn't stress it more. Personally, for me, if I don't put things in my calendar, they don't happen. So, you know, however, if I commit to something, it's more likely that, you know, I will go through, even if at that moment I have some, you know, work left to do. However, if I know that I'm meeting my friend tomorrow, 5 p.m., so I finish my work at 5 p.m. and I do it. So like, this is probably the best advice I could give, is to actually put that social time, social or sort of relationship time in your calendar, to have those time blocks. So you would know, because I believe, you know, that relationships don't happen on their own. You have to, you know, put energy and time, and you have to plan them. And it's a skill, and you can get better at that skill. So I'm trying to do that in my own life, and yeah, that's how I try to beat loneliness as a remote worker.
That's
Wonderful.
awesome. We just added the Google Family Calendar, and it's changed my life because, like, since the pandemic started, I used Calendly before, but I wasn't a huge like scheduler, hey, send you my link. Once, you know, everyone was online, I was like, okay, I need to like step my game up and use this more. Then I was like, oh no, things are just getting booked on top of like family events. I was like, what am I doing? The family calendar, and you're so correct, Amante. Like that calendar puts things into real life almost for us. And when you put it on there, it's like, we're gonna do this. And I think relationships take so much effort and connections take so much effort. That was a really 2 points that I'm taking from today. Check in with yourself. This shit takes effort. Okay, it's not going to happen on its own.
It's
So
it's
thank
not.
you.
It's not. And if we're going to combat, I know it's kind of quite a, in English, it's like we're combating and we're going into battle against some of these challenges. Just to remind everyone, loneliness is not just due to remote work, right? It's a global epidemic, pandemic. It's been acknowledged by experts all over the world as we move into a more technological age, that we're not finding the quality of connection often that we need. And therefore, it can happen at any time outside of work. But in remote work, we need to look at how we combat it. So we need to be proactive, like Colleen says. We need to use that intention, the beautiful word that gets used a lot in remote work practice. Be intentional. How does that calendar look for my connection needs? Maybe we'll reframe that after our learnings today. How does my calendar look for my quality connection needs? And I can throw that out and we can all sit and listen to it, but we're all individuals, personalities, beautiful human beings joining in, and we will have a certain take on what that connection need is for ourselves. It'll be very personal, like everyone's sharing, very, very specific and personal. So it does take time to curate it, to come up with it. So I really want to encourage people to think about that. So I've got a question in that I think it's interesting. So I want to, a couple of questions are coming in, but I want to phrase this one before we go on to talk about the apps, okay, that can support us and the technological tools that can support it. Because actually what we've been referring to here, even calendar management, the Google Calendar, Colleen, right? That's a tech tool that involves being on, right? Just to share, in our household on the fridge, we've got a printed calendar for our daughter as well, where we write the key things in, because she doesn't have a device and she won't for a while. But we also have the Google Calendar for the family stuff. So just to give that angle on how we can also put it to paper based. But we do live in a technological world. We're living with our devices. So before we talk about the apps, I want us to see how, I want to ask the question to the panel that's come through from someone. How is technology contributing to loneliness? Which I think is a really good question. And the example that the question gave, which I really liked, is it's so easy just to get everything to deliver to your door, not even leave your house. All right, such a true point. So how is technology contributing to loneliness? And I might go to you, Vera, first and see what you think, and then we'll go around the virtual room.
Yeah, well, I believe that Demanta already said that technology is a double-edged sword, as in, you know, we are connected more than ever, but we are disconnected more and more the same. Knowing from my own background, I mean, I started living online literally when I was 12, on my 12th birthday. I grew up with teenage friends online. I grew up with students online, and it kind of all came back once I was in my 20s, and then pandemic hit, and now everyone's online again. Which makes it one way very nice, because you have to be intentional and you can find your own tribe online. But on the other hand, life happens, you know. So if people, if you, for example, you have a great friend online and you speak to him or her every day, something in their own personal life can happen, and then that friend is gone. That doesn't diminish a friendship. It's just that it changes and it evolves. So technology, yeah, it brings you together, but in the end, yeah, we are human beings. We are socially, and we need to do stuff in person. And the great thing, even though remote work is great, the same applies here. You know, we love seeing each other in person, and those in-person moments are so valuable. So how does technology contribute? The fact that we are again not intentional, because everyone's just a message away. Okay, I send a message to my mother, great. now I don't have to speak to her for another month because, yeah, I mean, I already sent her a message. I called her. That's the same, right? No, it's not. Because when I go to see my mom, and she lives in the north of the Netherlands, and it's like a 6-hour travel, the moment as I'm there and I only see her every couple of months, it's so much more nicer and better than when I would see her every day. You know, I see some of my friends every day, and then the relationship might diminish. So yeah, it's just the fact that you are so easily, okay, I just do this, and you're not intentional about it anymore. And that's how I think technology diminishes social relationships.
Wonderful. I think making me think of my own mother. Looking forward to seeing her, Vera. So
Damn it, I gotta
but
call
it's-
moms. Raw, like,
There'll be lots of calls. Lots of calls to moms after this, and parents. But no, it's so true, doesn't it? Feel so easy. I've sent a little message, I've sent a voice message, sent a photo, but it isn't the same. And we have to be intentional. And that's so true. Mel, how is technology in a way contributing to loneliness? Because it is. I think we need to be honest about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic I have a lot to say on, but I think if I were to summarize it, I feel like instant messaging is like the junk food of social connection. And if you fill up with junk food, you have no space for the good stuff. And it's so easy to just have that easy interaction. You dash out that quick message, you wait 2 weeks to respond, and time goes by and you lose that sort of connection. And you know, when you're with somebody in real life, it's rude to be distracted, but when you're online, your default is distracted. So of course your connections are going to take a hit. So for me, quitting Facebook like many years ago actually improved how I felt overall, my overall mental health, how I managed my relationships, how I connected with people. So that's I don't think it's a controversial opinion anymore, but back when I quit Facebook, it was.
Totally. Did the same almost 10 years ago, Mel. So totally get with that.
oh,
And
I'm
I
addicted. I'm addicted. I mean, I'm not on that. All my pictures are there. All my family's there. Like, they got me. You know, they got obituaries. That's something that they didn't even think that they were going to be great at. Like, when you get older and your friends start dying, you go on there and you're like, holy shit, like, you can see the pictures. I'm sorry. They got me. I'm in MySpace.
Yeah, but
Um,
you're on Bebo as well, Colleen.
for me, I think, like, personally, I just get addicted. Like, I'm just addicted to Netflix. I'm just addicted to everything digital. You know, it's so easy to just watch, 12 episodes in a row. It's so easy to read 10 HBR articles in a row. It's so easy to get on LinkedIn and talk with. See, that's the challenge, because we're seeing it's a double-edged sword, back to Demonte's point. Like, there's so much good in it. I've met all of you because of technology. I've made so many connections because of posting on LinkedIn, being involved in this digital space. But at the same time, I've been told a million times by my partner, my daughter, Dad, put the phone down. So for me, I just think I love the junk food analogy. I just think digital consumption is junk food in general, because it's great in moderation, but don't eat too much of it. So yeah, I just think it's a double-edged sword. That's a great term. Demonte, gold star.
And we'll go to Demonte now, just to let you know, a few more questions have come in, so I'm going to handle one or two if I can, and we'll maybe come to the apps one. I know we've been weaving it in, all right, so we'll give you a chance to do that as well. So Demonte, have you anything to add to that, or we move on to the questions? I'm just conscious of time.
Yeah, I think you all summarized everything beautifully, so probably nothing else to add from my side.
Okay. And I had one question that I thought was really interesting, and it was in general, how was all of this discussion contributing to the term quiet quitting or people being disengaged, right? But I actually think we've kind of answered that. That came in a little bit earlier as we were talking, because I think, and I hope whoever's asked that this makes sense, but I think that people are not connected in a meaningful way to some of the points the panel have made. So if you take that one and look at the term quiet quitting, right, I think, and even potentially burnout, where there's that over expectation, connection, etc., that will, you know, we have that one. I want to move on to this this question because I think it's a really good one. How do companies encourage the more informal communications connections in an intentional way, given that there's always so much work and employees may feel that this is seen as a waste of time? So I think that's interesting, isn't it, given everything we've spoken about? So I'm going to go to Mel on that one first, and then maybe over to Demonte or anyone else who wants to pitch in. Mel, how can companies show that they really value this type of connection that we've all been talking about?
Set the example. It has to come from the top, because if it doesn't and you just tell people you want this thing to happen, it's not going to happen. And so I find that if you want people to be willing to, you know, speak up about mental health, you have to be the first one to say something. I don't shy away from ever saying like, hey, I need a mental health day. And I do it on a public channel, team channel. For the rest of my team, they tell me directly, obviously, but I set the example by saying like, I'm having a hard day today. I'm feeling pretty anxious about this. I just need to take an afternoon off. So for things like mental health, all the way down to things that seem maybe a bit more casual, like sending gifts, emojis, being a bit silly, like you have to set the example first, and you have to do it quite consistently as well. And I would say you pull people in so that you're not the only one doing it, and you have to explicitly tell people like, this is behavior that we like to have, and you tell them the reasons why. You know, it fosters more connection, it's a bit more fun, we like to, you know, not be too serious about work all the time. But you have to say a lot of these things explicitly. You have to follow through with your words. You have to coordinate and get people to do it as well. And then I think the last thing I would add here is that you can use technology to facilitate some of these things. So in Slack, you have the Giphy bot. That's like my favorite way of communicating, maybe a little bit too much. You know, instead of saying yes, I would just gift that to somebody to just be like, hell yes, drop bomb. So it's having these things, having that technology, having those like little reminders and like visual indications just consistently. That's how you build the sort of framework for that culture that everyone else will come into.
I want to hang out with Mel.
Yeah.
Come over. Whoa, got too excited.
Yeah, I want to hang out.
Drop Mike, okay, over there in Singapore. I mean, if someone really wants to add something else, but sorry, if any leader listening, please could take away the piece about lead by example. Mel does it. She's given you the example herself. That for me, and it's not that I don't think tools and infrastructure and documents have a place, but if you don't walk the talk, really, it's all a waste of time.
I just want to add, like, I love
You're not
Wu-Tang
allowed,
Clan.
you're not allowed, you're not allowed.
Okay, I want to add, I love the Wu-Tang Clan because they have the best song ever, and it's called Cash Rules Everything Around Me. Cream, get the money, not the dollar bill, y'all. And the reason I'm saying that is social connections. We've already identified the biggest challenge with remote work. It's what we're talking about. It's literally isolation and loneliness. In my opinion, isolation, loneliness, and communication, collaboration, those are the challenges. Put your money where your mouth is. Develop what we call at Blend a social connection strategy. Assess your company, identify what connections people are missing, and then develop a strategy around that data. We all need to make data-driven decisions. We're talking about touchy-feely stuff, but we're professionals here. So then go ahead and implement that, whatever plan you need to implement it. And then two things. Don't plan it after hours all the time. People have their own life. If you want to plan something social, plan it during the day. Plan it during the workday. Number two, whatever event you plan, let it just be about connections. You don't have to do work. Chase Warrington, we all know Chase from Doist. When he posts about his retreat, I think he says 10% or 20% work, 50% of your retreat free time, like nothing planned. So you just asked the question, how do you facilitate casual conversations and impromptu conversations? You have to be intentional about providing the space and then just let that happen. So there it is.
Beautiful, beautiful. And you got Chase name drop, and we're all big fans of Chase Warrington. Well, I am. It's like, I mean, I have a lifetime membership of the fan club.
Yeah, he rocks a good man bun too. He rocks a good man bun.
He's got a man bun. But yeah, totally lead by, and that creating the space. I think that's really, really interesting. We've got more of a comment in than a question, and I was just looking at it, and I think it's evidence to what a nice atmosphere we've portrayed on here, and what the space we've held. Because one of the audience says we need to innovate and rethink how to connect with the employee. To give an example, we are encouraging people to schedule a 30-minute walk 2 times a week, to take a paid walk, or connect your half day with yourself for a half day at the nearest park. We found that connection is not employee-employer. Think about what we've just been talking about. We understood that the connection starts with reconnection with yourself. Okay? And we believe as the employers, the leaders, that we need to innovate and support these things, these competencies. Okay? So that is such a forward thinking way of putting it. And so it's not just about, as you said, Klima, providing the space, but it's not just assuming that you are the employer providing, you're going to connect with lovely me, your leader, right? Because I'm the one hosting this, and I'm the leader, and I've got the power, etc., position in the company. It's about giving people the space to reconnect with themselves as well. And think about some of these threads about self-awareness that have come up too. Think about what Mel and Vera have shared about how they lead, okay, with very nice points there about Vera being considerate, thinking what she needs, checking in Mel about being, I don't like the word vulnerable, right? Mel, you're just being a human being, right? You're just being a human being. I need a duvet day, I need some time. And you're setting that example for your team, and I suppose you're giving permission. But I love that share that's come in as well, because how are we supporting people to reconnect with themselves? And we're coming up near the end, but isn't that sort of a nice link back to the start, where we were talking about the pandemic and reconnecting with families and all those things? Because no period in history or time is easy, but I certainly still believe we're all recovering from the pandemic. I know I am. Hands up, anyone who feels they've if you've fully recovered from the pandemic. Oh, Mel's got 2 hands. Good on you. Good on you. In Zaragoza, there's still people wearing masks. So there's some people who are immune compromised. We see them even on the streets. Yeah. So there you go, Mel. So I also think we flashed by that, didn't we? There's been a lot of things in society where we just have started running towards coming out of it and maybe not digested it. So I just want to throw it open to the panel in the last few minutes. We've got sort of 3-4 minutes. I'm going to check if there's any other questions, but I'll go around the virtual room. So start with you, Mel, in Singapore. If you wanted to tell us a little bit about Bravely, or anything you'd like to finish off with as we're wrapping up, anything you'd like to add, let us know.
Oh, wish I had gone last on this.
Well, I come back to you. I'll see who's ready. I'll come back to you. Anyone else want to go?
I can take up the challenge. So for me, as you can tell, I'm really passionate about mental health. I've spent 10 years running remote businesses. Over those 10 years, I spent most of it being a digital nomad, and loneliness was always a topic that came up anytime you sat down with another digital nomad, and it's been a lot of lessons learned there. So right now I'm the CEO and co-founder of Bravely, and we're all about supercharging therapy by giving you the tools so that you can work with your therapist to collaborate further outside of sessions. For us, it's a lot about understanding the data and the insights from yourself, but also learning all the different things. So for me, I also have social anxiety, so I see you there as well. And it was learning all the different skills to be able to talk to people, to reach out, to say hi, to be brave, give it a go, and kind of go after what you want. And really for us, when it comes to mental health, it's about applying all those same principles as well. So that was improvised. I hope that was
That was
fine.
wonderful. That was wonderful. Vera?
I'm not following her. I'm not following that.
Diamante,
No,
whoever wants to go.
no,
Go on,
I'll
Greg.
go. I would just say the one thing I want to leave everybody with is build a social connection strategy. We also call it a social calendar. It allows people to plan. It allows you to plan. And don't be so worried about attendance. I think as HR practitioners or operation professionals, we're so concerned about how many people actually participated. Just enjoy the moment and allow people to participate when they want. So that's what I would say. I would say this is the most important thing. Like if you have a budget, spend the budget on connection, because obviously that is the big challenge. And quiet quitting is real. And someone who's not connected to that company, they'll find another one. So also feel free to follow me on LinkedIn, Clint Clarkson, follow Blimmy Inc. And that's it.
Diamante, Vera, thanks, Kaleem.
Yeah, so yeah, I totally agree with what you guys said, and I'm super passionate about mental health as well. And in Medletic, we also try to create a tool, to create an app which would help people to beat loneliness, to improve their emotional resilience, to improve their emotional intelligence, and so on. And probably the sort of my last thing I wanted to say here is that I really, really believe that you as a leader, as a HR person, or even as an employee, should be really proactive about taking that time to connect with your colleagues or with your employees. And actually, I will give example of what we do at Medletic. So we actually half a year ago, I think, we created this remote team building tool, which we use ourselves as well. Of course, other organizations use the tool as well. However, the idea was to create a tool to sort of boost psychological safety within the team, and also to decrease loneliness. So people would have that chance to talk through. There are different activities going on there, and I'm really, really happy that each week during our retro session with our team, we take that 20 minutes and we actually go through those exercises, and it's amazing. It's totally amazing. It really works for us. So I think it's really, really important to find something that would work for you, to be proactive about it, and to actually follow through. Yeah, so probably that's it from my side.
Oh, thank you, Diamante. And a very quick, Vera, anything to add? Just
Yeah,
on
well,
the hour.
Thank you so much for allowing me to join. I learned a lot from you. And indeed, what Kaleem says, I'm super passionate about making remote work more human, but especially taking time to build that social connection and creating that place therefore. What I would like to give is, well, we do that at Unlock. I'm very passionate about that. If there is anything I can help you with, just reach out on LinkedIn, my email, or Twitter. I'm super passionate about it, and I'd love to help in any way. If you need tips, tricks, whatever, just mail me. The digital door is always open.
Fantastic. And as you can tell, this is a wonderful panel. Thanks to everyone, Diamante, Kaleem, Vera, and Mel, for their time today. It's been a pleasure on behalf of SafetyWing, and hoping to see you soon on another webinar. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the day.
Later, peace.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.